we have an agenda before us, and I will ask for a nomination to accept the agenda and a second, if you're so inclined, or to modify.
I make a motion to accept agenda.
Ms. Alston moves. Do we have a second? Second from Carl Schaefer, and all in favor of adoption? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We have two sets of minutes in front of us, and I hope everybody's had a chance to go through to look and make any corrections as need be. We have the June 17th, 2024 meeting minutes. Does anyone wish to move to amend or change these minutes in any way? Any corrections or updates needed? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of June 17th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of June 17th.
Ms. Alston moves. Second. And all in favor of adoption? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. And now we move on to the July 15th meeting minutes. Same questions. Do we have any changes or corrections or additions that need to be made? Hearing none, I'll ask for another motion.
Make that a motion as well.
Thank you, Ms. Alston.
Second.
Second, thank you. And all in favor, aye?
Aye.
The minutes of July 15th are unanimously adopted. Now, we come to the public comment period, and I'm going to sort of divide things to make it easier for everyone to follow and participate. In this initial public comment period, we'll take any general comments you might have, not specific to the two projects that are on the agenda tonight. Does anyone have general public comments to be made? If not, what we'll do then is when we come to the Alston Chapel and Firetower Road projects, we'll have a comment period adjacent to those issues. The other thing I would say, and it's wonderful to see so many interested people here. Yes, ma'am.
General question regarding the planning process.
Yes.
Is there a idea to possibly review the process to ensure there's more accountability of developers going forward instead of just following the 8 steps they have to take? But if there's concerns from the community, that they have to get back to us on it.
Well, that's one I think for Director Cahoon-Tingle. You want to address that now or when we get to the project? All right, we'll do that. There is accountability, and this, I was going to go on to say, this is not the legislative hearing for the adoption. That is probably going to be set for next month, and that is run by the Board of Commissioners. That is the legal hearing. Whatever you say tonight is a comment that will be included in the record of this planning board meeting, but it doesn't have any legal effect. And similarly, if you would like to submit any thoughts, any conditions, any recommendations in writing, your written submissions will be included in the record of tonight's meeting. And I guess quickly, maybe we can save you all a lot of time. Everybody that is here to speak in favor of Alston Chapel, please raise your hand. I see 3, 4. And all of those that would want to speak in opposition to Alston Chapel. All right, very good. And I have 15 people who signed up that would like to speak. And I'm going to assume that it's mainly Alston Chapel. Is there anyone here to speak about Firetower Road? No. Okay, so all Alston Chapel. What you might want to do, because I think everybody's going to stand up and say the same thing. You'll get 3 minutes. Jenna has the stopwatch over there, and at the end of 3 minutes, the hammer falls. I imagine there's going to be a lot of duplication of sentiment. If you want to caucus amongst yourselves and, nominate an orator to stand up and give comments on behalf of your friends and neighbors, please feel free to do so. That would shorten things up, because right now we have 15 people registered to speak on Alston Chapel. Okay, so feel free to talk among yourselves, and if you want to consolidate on a single speaker, we would recommend that. So,
Would be any possibility that we do, Firetower first, being that there was no one here to speak?
yeah, we could do Firetower first, I suppose. Does any, one of the board members have an objection to switching the order, Firetower Road, first and then moving on to Alston Chapel?
Since he's asked them to talk with among each other, be.
Right.
That'd be fine with our team, so.
Your team is fine with it? All right. Well, that's what we'll do, folks. We'll reverse the order of things. And so, our item related to Firetower Road, which is item 7, will proceed now. Sir?
Will the advisory board make a decision on the Alston Chapel project tonight at the meeting?
I can take that. The decision on whatever happens this evening is an advisory opinion that goes.
I understand,
But that will happen tonight during this meeting. Yes.
The board, the advisory will make a
This would
decision,
be advisory board, and yes, for them.
make sure.
Right. And the legislative legal hearing is next month. Date and time to be set. So let's go to Alston Chapel and who is presenting? Eric?
No, we're doing Firetower, remember?
I mean, Firetower Road, pardon me.
Okay.
Firetower Road. Get straight, Frida.
I try hard, I try hard.
Thank you, Frida. Your help is much appreciated.
Good evening, everyone. A legislative request is made by Chatham Park Investors LLC is hereby made for the subdivision of parcel ID number 7386 located on east of Pittsburgh Firetower Road and measuring 9.32 acres into 14 townhome lots within the first phase and the designation of portion of the property slated for future development. From the staff analysis, the background, Chatham Park Investors LLC held a meeting, a community meeting that is, on the first day of May 2024, where all adjacent landowners were notified. There were 2 landowners present at the meeting. Those questions range from the sidewalk installation to availability of public amenities, as well as time frame for constructions. Those were all answered. The recommendation is that staff recommends approval for PB 24305, Firetower Affordable Home Housing. I will yield to the developer if they want to make a presentation.
The developer like to present? No? All right, very good. So we have before us now the opportunity among the board members to submit any questions for Eric that might occur to you.
I do have a couple questions. For the access easement to SCM 1, there's an access easement, but it does not make its way to any right of way. Is the intent for that to be the sanitary sewer easement?
That would be more than engineering unless one of the guys wants to tackle that one.
Corey, what page are you on?
This is on C2.
Yeah.
C2, okay.
Good evening, I'm Chris Rushour with Withers Drive now. Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, so the access easement for SCM 1, there's an easement around it, but it doesn't make its way to any right of way. Is there, what's the intent? Is the intent for it to kind of meet with the sanitary sewer easement? Or how does that work?
Yes, it should be connecting from the western parking lot area.
Okay.
And it should be showing connection to that SEM, absolutely.
And that wouldn't make, and there wouldn't be any issues, like assuming in the future there needed to be any work done on that pond. That 20-foot easement, there wouldn't be any issue with like heavy equipment going over that?
No, absolutely not. So, yeah.
No, it's fine. And then just the only other question I had was, we see where the sanitary sewer easement comes through and it kind of just meets with the access easement that the water's running with. Is there any need to kind of differentiate where the sanitary sewer, or maybe like if the access easement needs to be labeled as a sanitary sewer easement and access easement?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best course of action is to make sure it connects to the SEM and then again have a dual purpose easement. Absolutely.
Awesome. That's all I had. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jenna talking?
Mhm.
I wrote up there, my main concern was to see how these access points would hit Firetower and with the shrubbery and buffering and stuff they have in there, it looks to me as good as it can be dealt with. So I don't have any concerns with that, realizing they've got that one little piece there,
Mhm.
you know, that basically fronts on Firetower, but they don't have real high density in there, so it didn't cause me any heartburn, really.
Mhm. Any other questions from the board? Do I have, yeah, go ahead.
What is the amount of people that are gonna be living in this section?
So there's 14 townhomes in this
Average of
Initial phase.
people per?
initial phase, yes.
What do you use as a number when you're figuring how many people per townhome?
It's a 2-bedroom townhomes, so I'm assuming two people, but I'm curious what the root of your question is for.
Well, if it's 2 bedroom, we're probably looking at probably 3 people. Man, wife, child, so on, so. There's just such high density coming into Pittsburgh and the traffic and everything else that's coming in. I'm just curious how many people were expected to be in there. So you have
So
2 bedrooms. If it were 3 bedrooms, then there would be more people, correct?
correct. So the assumption is 2 bedrooms for this phase of each of the townhomes. We're accounting for all of the future development also when it comes to the TIA update. So Kimley Horn has done a TIA update, planning out how many trips in and out are coming. And that's, you know, they used whatever amount of people that were going to be planned in the community to develop that.
Yeah, it just seems like everything that's coming in front of us now is either apartments or townhomes. So that was the reason for my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the TIA that was submitted initially, and something will speak for you, but you want to bring this up. Actually, the assumption is about 9 trips per household per day being added. The street that actually takes you out on the Firetower is essentially a temporary use. And when the street that is going to take you from this particular, there's several more buildings in this particular complex. These are the only ones that are for sale for individual ownership. But the ones that are going to be the multifamily portion of it, which is the other affordability requirement under the plans for Chatham Park, this particular site. When that street connects to Vine Parkway, if you actually read the TIA, what you're going to discover is that since Vine Parkway not only takes you straight out to Thompson, but it also carries you over through Wendover, over to eventually land on Chatham Parkway and then straight out 15501. The assumption is that the bulk of the traffic would be using that path to get in and out. The likelihood of jamming out the Firetower Road going into the next neighborhood over is nil.
Eric, do you want to move on to the planning department's analysis and recommendations on this?
So the property, sorry, the property is currently zoned plan development district or PDD, and it is a part of the North Village small area plans that belongs to Chatham Park Development Master Plan. All adjacent property east the side of this parcel are zone PDD, whereas the adjacent properties to the north, south, and west are zone residential. Rural agriculture. It would please the board to know also that the Town of Pittsburgh has taken an approach to try to mitigate any future transport related issues. What we have done recently is engage with the NCDOT to try and improve or to renew rather the comprehensive transportation plan, because we do realize it is a little bit out of date, but we are working aggressively to mitigate that problem. Also, the Chatham Park TIA does account for the future developments and the future growth under the current conditions, as well as predicting what the future conditions are going to look like.
Any other questions from the board? If not, we'll entertain either a motion to affirm or to deny on this project on Firetower Road.
I move that we approve the recommendation.
Mr. Schaefer,
Now,
Second. Alfreda, second. All in favor? Well, any further discussion or questions? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. There. All right, now we move on to the aforementioned Alston Chapel, and Director Cahoon Tingle will present.
Thanks for coming in. Okay. Good evening. I did want to point out, as had been pointed out earlier, obviously it's my desire, as much as anybody else in here tonight, to have you all arrive at a recommendation. When I prepared and submitted my report, and I do think that it's an important point for the public, and it's certainly an important point, not to remind you all, because I feel like the last couple of meetings, we spent an amazing amount of time on training, but this board does not have the ability to stop a project in its tracks. Your function is to evaluate it from a neighborhood perspective, from a citizen that lives here perspective or lives in the ETJ area perspective, and then to provide some feedback to the Board of Commissioners regarding this particular matter. Do you realize that the developer had two neighborhood meetings, which is an unusual number for the size of this project, but I'm going to say that the one feature that those two project meetings had in common was a great deal of opposition. And so we did anticipate the turnout this evening. Despite the very bland nature of my report, I would like to amend that report while we are sitting here this evening. I'm going to give you a list of written remarks, but they are not printed in your piece. I want to advise you all that since April of last year, which is roughly the time that I got here, we've had multiple petitions to rezone in manners that run contrary to the conservation of forest land that is described in the land use plan. And it is a somewhat concerning matter. I do realize that any developer can come before this board and ask for anything they wish to ask for, and to the governing board of the town. But I do want to be very clear that a great deal of work went into that land use plan, and there was a very large amount of area that was recommended for conservation of forest areas. Reeves Farm, which is across the street from where we're sitting right now, will impact the forested goals of the property in a lot of ways that I feel are significant. Mr. Stramack's mini storage that was recently approved by the Board of Commissioners is also in opposition to our land use plan, and it's going to cause us to have to amend that plan, most particularly the map. When there is a project that is approved in opposition to the land use plan, it does not change the text of that plan, but what it does do is it does change that map permanently, and it creates donut holes inside of an otherwise unbroken area. The literal recommendation of our land use plan is to conserve the forest or forested areas. The issue in the case of this particular development, in terms of that lofty goal, is that you cannot cram 192 structures into a forested area without essentially clear cutting that area. Revegetation takes 30 years at a minimum if you're looking for hardwoods, and 15 years if your goal is pine trees. The emphasis on townhomes and apartments does not square with low-density forest-oriented development. I want to go on record as saying so tonight. The only clear element within the UDO that would be applicable to maintaining a conservation ideal is a conservation subdivision. The density that the developer requires or is requesting does not exist within that type of subdivision. If you would like to read over it in the UDO at some point at your leisure, I would recommend that you do so. This option was discussed in the initial meeting that I had with the owners, and it was rejected within the course of that meeting. But they were put on notice right away that there was some conflict between what they would like to do and what they were shown the plan said. Now, in order to provide the type of balance that I feel is part of my job,
I want to point out that the usable area on this particular property is roughly 64 acres. And as we stand here, or in my case, or sit here today, in the case of a large number of the people in this room, I do want you to know that theoretically, under an RA zoning district, which is what is currently zoned, you could have a theoretical 64 lot, single family residential, although roughly 2 acres would be eaten up by infrastructure such as roadways and sidewalks and so forth. We do not differentiate within our extraterritorial area in terms of the standards of a subdivision. So a rural subdivision doesn't look any different than a subdivision within the corporate limits. Now, as we sit here today, it is zoned for 1 acre lots. There would be no need for rezoning. These people would not be here this evening. The developer would not be sitting in front of us. We would be reviewing construction drawings. Water or sewer would not be provided to the site. It would have to be well and septic. And there would be no real reason to annex into the town if the owner thought that there was a return on his $1.5 million investment. The owner came forward and requested rezoning and conditional rezoning, I might add, and voluntary annexation in order to obtain water, sewer, municipal services based on the close proximity to downtown. High density is the only factor that makes this development possible in their estimation. All he would need to do if he were simply going with the 64 lots would be to subdivide, follow our ordinance for that type of development in an ETJ area. And I think that detail has probably been left out of most of these discussions. The part that gives people an opportunity to comment is the fact that he wants to vary from the normal pattern of growth. Based on my personal observations during multiple visits to the site by car over the past 65 days, and there have been no less than 15 such visits in my automobile, I have concluded that the rest of the street, Alston Chapel, is largely developed in what I would consider to be a very rural pattern. There are large lots, but by no means is this forest verdant. Churches, houses, barns, cleared land as far as one can see, primarily for farming and agricultural purposes, and then this one cluster of woods that sticks out quite a bit. The 1964 plat that created Woodbury Forest directly across the street from this subject property contains much smaller lots, some as small as half an acre, but it predates the current zoning ordinance or the county subdivision regulations. The neighborhood is an anomaly. What I'm going to say to you is that based on the conditions of the site and based on the petition that's in front of you, which I'll begin to discuss in just a moment, I decided that it would be much more representative of the community. It would be much more representative of the people who are standing and sitting behind me, and I'm using my hand to include everyone, to mention that instead of taking our typical planning department task and making a binding recommendation, I left this one open deliberately. We received a legislative request of Pulte Homes, which is represented by attorney Matthew Carpenter, who's sitting behind me. It's been submitted petitioning a map amendment for rezoning this parcel 60804 from its current classification RA, which is rural agricultural, to MRCZ, which is multifamily conditional rezoning for residential. It's approximately 74.32 acres and it's located south of Reeves Farm. I did want to point out that there's a large amount of wetlands that have been federally delineated. This is not wetlands that's capable of being declared not wetlands by saying that it's not connected to a constant source of water. There is a constant water source, and it is a tributary of the Haw River. So I do want to point out that I'm very aware of the environmental conditions on the property. The site was acquired about 7 years ago. At the time, the town lacked sufficient sewer capacity for the developer to build any homes on the property, so he sat back on pause. In your case, you have an equal amount of information in the back of this packet, whether you choose to recommend denial or approval based on the presentation provided by the developer when I stand down in just a moment, and the fact that this project is not consistent in my estimation with the land use plan. One of the many recommendations and requirements of this particular project is in order to obtain utilities when they are available to the town, voluntary annexation will be required, as well as an extension of all utilities to the site at the developer's cost. Again, the land use plan shows this area as residential with an overlay designated as a natural resources conservation target area. The target area does not uniformly blanket it, but I do think that it bears mention. If you can move to the map on the next page, Jenna. Okay, well, right there. So the yellow is residential and the hash lines that are diagonal are the forested natural conservation target area that's identified in the plan. I did, let's whoever just did that. If approved as requested, this site will become yet another portion of the conservation area that needs to be removed from that classification within our land use plan. The abundance of streams, floodplain, and the wetlands delineated within the project area make this, on the periphery of the project area, make this a challenging project. There are approximately 64 usable acres of land that are not located in an environmentally fragile area. It will be difficult to develop. I did want to point out one more thing. If you go to the next picture, this is called a bubble map. In a bubble map, you do not show a lot layout. You show basically, in this case, two different kinds of use. One is single family lots and the other one is townhomes. And then there's open space areas. There is a very, very small speck there with some words beside it, and that is the cemetery that has been noted. Let me see if I've got anything else before I turn the show over. In your packet, which Jenna will just move to the next slide for a second, you'll see that these are the conditions that were in a conditional zoning. The staff and the manager and the mayor and other members of town elected board get together and go over a list of what we consider to be the normal components of a conditional zoning. Conditional zoning is supposed to have an awful lot of conditions. You remove some of the uses that would be potentially possible on the property. They have reduced it to this list that's in front of you right there: community, garden, dwelling, duplex, dwelling, live, work, dwelling, single family, townhouse, clubs, lodges, banquet halls. I know you all can read, so let me not belabor it. And of course, the cemetery is already in place. I did want to point out to you all that there is an affordable housing component. If you'll just scoot up to that page. Right there, right? Okay, so 5% of the residential units, or more or less 9 of them, are going to be offered up as an affordable option. And there's at least one person in the room who's representing the land trust that is potentially going to be taking on that particular project. What I did want to say is, what I did want to say is that when you get to the back of your packet, what you have are two identically appointed statements. One is an approval and one is a disapproval. They both say an awful lot of the same thing. And I'm just going to say that in what may be one of the only times while I'm standing in this position that I do so tonight, I am simply saying to you all that I am open to hear what you have to say and what you ultimately decide. And I would appreciate not being asked to be pinned to the ground for a recommendation. I gave mine in the prologue.
Here's good.
I appreciate it.
Would the applicant or the applicant's counsel care to present?
Good evening, Chair Braun and members of the board. I'm Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street, here this evening on behalf of the applicant and the property owner, which is Pulte Homes. I'm sorry, not the property owner, the applicant and the developer. The property owner is a third party who Mr. Tingle mentioned bought the property several years ago. Also with me tonight, I've got Kelly Race with Pulte Homes, Dick Antrilli with Withers and Ravenel, our civil engineer, and Reinald Stevenson with DRMP, our traffic engineer. And so all those folks are here to answer your questions following our short presentation. And so the purpose of the rezoning request is to allow market rate and affordable homes in close proximity to downtown Pittsburgh. And so can we go next slide, please? And you can see here just how close to downtown this site is. I think it's a little unusual because it feels very rural, but when you map it, it's just a little over a mile drive from the circle in the center of downtown where the historic courthouse is. It sits just south of where we are right now and also south of Reeves Farm. As was discussed, you can see that Robeson Creek serves as the northern boundary of our property line. So that's why there's sort of that unusual boundary, which is actually the center line of the creek. Some other uses that are in close proximity, you can see the lake park that's just maybe half a mile to our east. And that was the town's first park. And so what I think is important about the proximity to downtown and to the park is that from a planning perspective, if there's anywhere to add additional density, it's in close proximity to downtown, to existing roads and services. And so that's the idea here, rather than, finding a site that's 7-8 miles out of downtown that requires sewer extensions, creates a lot of vehicle miles traveled. We're trying to focus the development close to downtown, and hopefully reduce those trips and help sort of revitalize or continue to lift up downtown Pittsburgh. Next slide, please. So as Mr. Cahoon-Tingle mentioned, the current zoning here is residential agricultural, and that allows single-family homes up to 1 unit an acre, so large lots, 40,000 square foot lots. And the proposed zoning is multifamily residential conditional. So the current zoning would allow the entire site to be developed, graded, subdivided, without a rezoning or without any conditions. The development would just have to follow the UDO, and it would be approved if it was consistent with the UDO requirements. So what we're proposing is an alternative to the current zoning, which is multifamily residential conditional. And I don't want the name of the zoning district to confuse you. We're not proposing any apartments as set forth in the conditions. It's just single family attached and detached, so townhomes and single family. And it's a conditional case. And so I think that's really the big benefit here as compared to the existing zoning. The proposed zoning offers conditions that otherwise wouldn't be in place. And so all that to say that it's not necessarily the decision before you, and ultimately the Board of Commissioners is not either to conserve this property or to allow our development. It's whether the existing zoning or the proposed zoning is more consistent with the town's long-range plans and vision for this property and the overall Pittsburgh area. But next slide, please. As Mr. Tingle mentioned, we've got a couple of different land use map designations here. The first is the residential designation that you can see in yellow, which calls for residential development. And the second is the natural resources conservation target area. And so when you first see those, they seem at odds. They seemed at odds to me. And so we've spent a lot of time working with staff and discussing as a team, how can we try to accomplish the goals of both of those designations and reconcile them? And I think when you dig a little bit deeper, it's a little more clear how to do that. Not exactly clear, but it does give some ideas. So next slide, please. So speaking to the residential designation, one aspect of the land use plan that I really like is it includes these suitability maps for different uses in Pittsburgh. And on the left of your screen, you can see the residential suitability map. And generally speaking, the areas that are shown in green on that map are where residential development is recommended. Areas in yellow and orange are where it's less recommended. And you can see the inputs that went into that map at the bottom left, things like proximity to existing streets, residential development, commercial services, and also land that's away from industrial uses and other types of uses that might be harmful. So as you can see, that particular map shows this property as suitable for residential development. And then on the right of your screen is the narrative language from the land use plan for the residential designation, which calls for smaller lots in combination with townhomes and some apartments, which again, we're not proposing here. Next slide, please. So to touch on the conservation target area designation, you can see that map on the left side of your screen. It's area 7 of the conservation target area, which is the Robeson Creek headwaters. And basically what it calls for is respecting and preserving the areas surrounding Robeson Creek. So the creek is obviously an environmentally sensitive area, the floodplain and wetlands that surround it. And so it calls for locating development away from the creek, not in the floodplain, and doing everything possible to preserve the water and the integrity of the creek. To clear up, there are a couple of different maps in the land use plan that I think are confusing. On the right is the conservation suitability map, which designates property across town that is important for preservation, so not developing at all. And it designates those properties with the different shades of green and the legend there. You can see our property is white for the most part. The area around the creek is obviously green and not to be disturbed. And so my read of the natural resources conservation target area is that it doesn't require complete preservation of this property, but it requires different aspects of the development and conditions to preserve the integrity of the creeks. Next slide, please. And so we took those two land use plan designations and tried to reconcile them. And where we arrived was with this concept plan after going back and forth with town staff. And so what this plan shows is 192 single family and townhome units. You can see the townhomes will be in the pink area at the top of your screen and the single family to the south. You can see the green area around the perimeter of the property. That's an area that's floodplain, open space, riparian buffers. And then we have a condition to install a greenway trail shown in that dark purple color around the perimeter of the property. So that's something that town staff recommended and that we'll be installing it as part of the project to hopefully utilize that natural area that's really pretty, without too much clearing or land disturbance. So we probably need to have further discussions with staff on the type of trail and exactly what that's going to look like. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we also have a host of zoning conditions with this case. So these conditions, if approved, will apply to the property regardless of this development or any specific developer. And so there are 21 total. Again, I won't read them all, but I'll touch on some of the important ones. The first is the permitted uses. They generally only allow single family detached and townhomes with some other uses there, in case there's a clubhouse or community center or a park involved. And then the cemetery too, there's a condition later on in the list of conditions that the cemetery will be preserved in place. That's an older family rural cemetery that I'm sure you're used to seeing in Chatham County and Wake County for that matter. The second condition is a cap on the total number of units. It's a max of 192 residential units, which comes out to just under 3 units an acre. And if you compare that to densities in other districts in the UDO, I think the low medium density designation district allows up to 2.5 units an acre. So we're proposing just under 3. And although it's more than what's allowed by the current zoning, I think it is in a lot of ways low density in terms of how the terms are described in the planning world. Next slide, please. The next condition is the 10-foot wide greenway trail I mentioned. The cemetery preserved in place. Along our western property line, we're also committed to a 15-foot type C perimeter buffer. There's an existing home along that property line. And to the north of their driveway, there's a lot of floodplain and riparian buffer, but to the south, there's not. So we added that condition to make sure that there's a buffer between their driveway and our site because the UDO doesn't require one at the subdivision stage. The next list of conditions is a group of environmental conditions that we've taken from other projects in Cary and Apex, and we thought those would make sense here. The first is that all units will have solar conduit. So if a particular homeowner wants to come in and install solar on their roof, it allows that to be done without rewiring the house and putting in new conduit. The second, that there'll be a 240 volt outlet for EV charging in the garage. That's what I think Pulte and other builders are seeing a high demand for that from home buyers that want EV charging outlets in their garage. a sign per SEM to discourage use of fertilizer and reduce pet waste, to hopefully protect, again, the integrity of the drainage areas, 2 pet waste stations. The project will only plant drought-resistant warm season grasses. That's something that's mentioned in the land use plan. The next is no clearing of land disturbance in the riparian buffer. And then the project will also plant 1 native pollinator demonstration garden. So those are all relatively minor things, but I think they do help with the overall, positive impacts of the project. So next slide, please. The next list is the architectural controls. And these prohibit things like vinyl siding. And the general goal here is to ensure that these are high quality homes. These are something that you see in a lot of other places, these types of conditions, because the town is not legally allowed at subdivision to impose the architectural limits on single family homes. And so we're doing that here through zoning conditions. Next slide, please. And then maybe most importantly is the affordable housing condition. And the condition is that 5% of the units will be for sale affordable housing units, sold to home buyers at 80% of the area median income. And I think, fortunately, Pittsburgh has been really successful in getting commitments at zoning for affordable housing, oftentimes in projects that have a master developer without a builder or an affordable housing partner. What makes this different is that we have both. We have the builder in Pulte, they're the builder and developer, so they're not looking for a builder to build these units. And we just recently are discussing partnering with the Community Home Trust, which operates out of Orange County, and they have a long track record of administering and selling affordable units to affordable home buyers. And so we're really excited about that partnership, and hope that through our partnership with CHT, that those units will actually be built and not just be paper units. I think the initial estimates show that the initial sale to CHT will be for $100,000 to $200,000 less per unit than the market rate. And so the way that will work is Pulte will construct the units and then sell them to the trust at an affordable price. And then the trust will find an affordable home buyer to purchase them. And generally speaking, if the home buyer goes to sell the house later, it's sold back to the Community Home Trust to ensure that long-term affordability. And so Kimberly Sanchez with CHT is actually here tonight. I'd like her to speak a little bit about the trust and introduce herself. So.
Thanks. I'm Kimberly Sanchez. I'm the Executive Director of Community Home Trust. And yeah, we are excited to be thinking about another partnership here. And currently we're partnering with the school system to do some master leasing for teachers, but we would love to do some homeownership stuff.
Talk into the mic better, I can understand.
Yes, thank you for asking. Oh my gosh, you're right. It wasn't even close. Okay, Kimberly Sanchez, Executive Director. I'm going to say it again. We've been doing this kind of work in Orange County for over 30 years. And so we were really excited to work with the town. We're working with the county currently on a master leasing program for teachers. And when Pulte reached out to us, we said, yeah, this is our business. So we would be interested in continuing to talk about a partnership because this is the business that we're in. The beauty of Community Home Trust or home ownership, the home ownership part, is that our homes sit in the land trust. So they are permanently affordable, like permanently affordable forever. And the way that we do that, the mechanism is through a ground lease, and we're a real estate firm. So all the homes are resold back to us. So that means that we kind of keep control of that affordability. And we would love to be here working in Chatham, right next door to Orange. And so if you have any questions, you can contact me, but we're happy to be having these conversations here. And it's nice to meet you all. Go ahead.
Next question.
Yes. Yeah, go right ahead.
Just so I'm clear. Maybe I don't quite understand the model. Because homeownership, to me, especially from the affordability is being able to, get some equity out of the home once you sell. And so if someone is, if someone's purchasing from you and then has to sell back to you, what's the mechanism that they would gain some equity in the home that they're, or do they, is that possible? What kind of-
That's an excellent question. So it is a shared ownership, shared equity model. Our ownership, however, appreciation is capped in our program at 1% per year. Because it's if you want to have a permanent affordability, you have to keep prices down. So that's the way that it works. But once somebody gets into our program and gets into our homes, it's not like we certify them or anything. So most people earn their equity inside of sort of their pocket, right, their savings account and so forth. But you do leave with something when you leave. It's just not what the market is giving people right now. And so we just kind of create our own market. So we don't even touch the actual market.
And then, and I'm sorry for taking up time, but then the next question I have is, if you get 1%, in terms of moving out of affordable housing into, moving, maybe your family grows, something like that. Again, that equity helps you to build, to purchase the next home, right? Because you're selling and making some money. And if you're only allowed 1%, what does that model look like in terms of the next purchase, if you have any examples?
Do you mean the next purchase that the family is going to make on the private market?
Yes. There's not much, it's just the 1% of equity that you earn per year, is that right?
That's right, and also whatever you pay down on your mortgage. So if you stay in the program about 5 years or so, you usually walk away with $10,000-$15,000. No, that's not a ton of money, but you also should have hopefully have more income at that point in time to be able to obtain a big mortgage or whatever it is, but to enter. Yeah, great questions.
Let me just ask, is there a significant backlog of applicants for this type of housing that you've seen in Chatham County?
In Chatham County?
Well, tell us about Orange and as you make your way into Chatham County.
Yeah.
What is the demand like for the affordable units?
Yeah, great, excellent. So we have a pool of applicants, and I can tell you how many are in there, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because we have to match our applicants based on certain criteria as well as what the unit is that's available, right? So we're not putting 5-person households in 1 bedroom. What we do know, though, is our chamber, which I think is part of you guys, has done some studies. 40,000 people are commuting back and forth between counties on a daily basis, between sort of the tri-county, 4-county area. What that tells us and what we know anecdotally, whether or not these are people in our pool, is that the people who work in the community and can't live in the community, those are the people that are our homeowners. For persons like teachers, nurses, firefighters, police officers, daycare workers, restaurant workers, those grocery stores, those are the people who we really target because they are the homeowners that really fit our program best. So if you can think of all of the people who do that sort of daily service work, who don't live here, that's who we're targeting. And I think this is like 9 homes or something that they're proposing. But yeah, we would certainly, and we would work with the town to develop the criteria to make sure that, your community is what's represented in this house.
Thank you.
Great question.
Randy.
Yes, and at least one of the recent presentations to this board where there was an affordable component, I believe one of the questions from your board was, what is to stop someone who doesn't match a certain income criteria from going in and buying? In this particular case, the safeguard is that you would have to qualify for the program call to be in the pool of potential applicants.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you for the presentation. Counselor?
Just take a moment to conclude here. If we could go to the next slide. One more, please. So sort of to summarize things, we obviously went through the land use map designations and what we believe those mean and how we've used those to develop our plan. The other aspect of evaluating a rezoning case is if it's in the public interest and consistent with other town policies, including the land use plan written policies. And so based on our application that we worked on for several months and the 21 conditions, we do believe that this proposed zoning is in the public interest because it will allow market rate and affordable units in close proximity to downtown, which places less strain on infrastructure and adds more houses and roofs to the downtown area. Also, what you just heard about the unique partnership with the Community Home Trust, I think that's important here because it can offer a blueprint for how the town of Pittsburgh can work with developers to develop work with private developers to develop affordable housing and to actually build and administer those units. Basically, all the questions that I've had when an affordable commitment comes up, the Community Home Trust has answers to. So I think that's a big part of this case. And then finally, again, just adding housing close to downtown, near existing parks and businesses. And so with that, we respectfully request your recommendation for approval and are happy to answer any questions.
I've got one, and maybe for your engineer, what percent impervious is expected for this project?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've called Mr. Antrilli up to talk about that. I will say, I don't think we have an exact impervious number yet because we're at the zoning stage and we still don't have a full subdivision design. But Nick may be able to give you a ballpark.
An estimate is fine.
Or a target.
So around 40–50% is what we're thinking right now, as an estimate. That's okay. Yes, sir.
Population, would it be about 672 people for your development?
I think, does that assume 3 or 4 people per unit? It sounds like.
It's 3.5.
I think, I don't know how many, you want to come up, Kelly? Yes. The question was, how many people total do you anticipate here? So I think it's really, how many people per unit do you assume on average?
Each of the townhome units are 3 bedrooms each, and the single family, they average, those are mostly 4-bedroom units.
We'd be looking at roughly 700 people for your development,
I mean,
At least.
roughly.
there's no way to predict who's gonna buy the homes or how many, whether it's 2 per.
Where do you expect the people to come from? The buyers?
I mean, I don't have the market intelligence in front of me, but this is a very popular area and growing area. There are people moving here every day from all over the country.
Basically, we're building for people to come to. Would that be the answer you give to me?
Well, they're new houses, so there will be new buyers. That doesn't mean they will be new to the area necessarily.
Thank you.
We'll get to the public comments in a sec.
Yes, ma'am.
The figure of just under 3 units per acre,
Yes.
is that an average of the townhome area and the single family?
Yeah, so that's the 192 units divided by 64, which is the acreage of the tract.
Counselor, I've got a hypothetical question, I suppose. If all of these units are built out and at whatever price point they're sold, what might be the impact on tax revenues to the town of Pittsburgh to pay for our police, our fire, our public services? Have you done any forecast of that?
We don't have specific numbers tonight. We can do that. I know, each individual lot will obviously be
Going to be a different price.
right. We'll have, and so and the construction of these homes is probably 3 or 4 years out at this point. So it's difficult to.
Mr. Director.
Yes, I was gonna say that actually, based on the statistical information that we gave you on average household years, 2.3, not 3.5.
Okay.
The birth rate has fallen considerably. Yes, there are houses that are the exception to the rule, but if you're in a 2-bedroom townhouse, you're not gonna be a family of 6. Second.
Understood. What, just give me an idea of what the developer's selling price range is sort of forecasted to be.
We don't have that now. And
Low number, high number?
yeah, and I know it's not a good answer, but Yeah, we run into these situations all the time. And the issue is that, you know, again, we're 3 or 4 years out from when the houses will even be sold. And that's probably a rapid timeline. So if I told you a number, it would be wrong in one way or the other. So.
Very good. The 5% for affordable, is that our ceiling? It seems kind of low for what we've been seeing in other developments.
Yeah, it is the ceiling, and I can explain why. It's because of the difference between for rent affordable units and for sale affordable units. So when, you know, a lot of, you know, we did look through the other cases that have made affordable commitments. And most, if not all of those projects were satisfying those conditions through rental units. So that's a situation where an owner is owning the, you know, the apartment complex, and the rent per unit might be, you know, $300-400 cheaper per month than the market rent, or, you know, it might be even closer than that. The way that the for sale affordable units work is Pulte is constructing the unit, and then they're immediately selling it at a for sale price. And so that for sale price can't be more, it can't equate to a mortgage for the home buyer that's over 30% of the home buyer's gross monthly income. And so what that does is it brings the for sale price of the home really far below the market rate. So, you know, whereas with rental units, you can sort of spread that loss over, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. With the for sale units, it's an immediate hit. And so, you know, we've looked at the numbers as they would sit now, and they would probably be at least $100,000 per unit below the for sale price, below the market rate. So for 9 units, it's upwards of $1 million cost to the project. And so there becomes a point where, you know, if we add more units, it's just not financially feasible to do the subdivision, and Pulte wouldn't do it. So.
Okay. Also, under item number 10, under the affordability, there was some language in there that seemed kind of odd to me, especially after being explained how the affordable is going to work.
Right.
The requirement of the affordable houses to be sold before final plat. That seems odd because you can sell lots before they're platted.
I can, well, the final plat typically comes at the end, you know, once they, yeah. So we removed that language now.
Okay.
But, you know, early in the process, you know, you saw that behemoth paragraph there. That was before we had the conversations with CHT and they became involved. So, you know, we didn't get the language done in time for the meeting tonight, but we did send it to the planning director. And it's a simplified version, and it doesn't have that final plat language or the language about paying a fee in lieu. We removed that too. So.
Thank you.
Randy.
I was just to say, for the sake of clarity, the cutoff for materials for this meeting was probably 10, 12 days ago. So with that in mind, it's very generous of them to bring it in. If that language is to be included in the recommendation that's going up, we don't mind adding it, but what we're not empowered to do is continue to add it straight up until this meeting.
Sure.
Also, a very minor point of clarity here, and that was slammed to the opposing team. Let me just say, the last project that came through here, which was Robinson's Walk, was a flat 10% affordability. It is a different model, and not in a arrangement with the Home Trust, but it was 5 at one line, 5 at another. So it added up to 10. It's not that they're not aware.
No, I understand.
We made it very
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions from the board before we go to the public comment period?
This question might be more for, I'm not sure who, Randy. In terms of the voluntary annexation, that piece, it would just for this particular property. So the properties right next door would not be annexed into the town and therefore subject to the town. It would just be this particular.
It's just not an annexation if it's non-contiguous, but it is a requirement in order to be eligible for our utility.
And this project, the developer would take on the cost of accessing the town utilities and resources. Is that correct?
If you were to build directly next door to an existing subdivision that is inside the corporate limits today and did not require annexation, the developer is still required to pay, and the town pays zero in terms of helping you connect to our utilities. We also don't pay for roads. They're done by the developers.
So just so I'm just clear, just so I'm clear, the developer is paying for the developer has offered to be voluntary annexed. So in order to access the services, and the developer would pay for all of the connection points to make that happen and the roads to make that happen.
Correct, yeah, so we have an annexation condition actually, that did say prior to final plat, another change, but before this meeting, but get in, is that we'll, petition for annexation because annexation is a decision of the board, so we can't condition the board. We'll petition for annexation prior to preliminary plat approval. And the reason for moving that up was because exactly what you're discussing, utilities. And so, but we did talk to Tri-River, and, to try to get an idea of when the force main will be constructed to open up the additional capacity, because this project will really be waiting on capacity. We can't go and build it if there's no capacity. So right now, I think they're expecting bidding to happen in November for that force main, and then an 18-month, November of this year, and then an 18-month construction process, which would put it in mid-2026 for completion. So we couldn't do anything until then. And there are also system development fees that developers have to pay for sewer, I believe, and they can be pretty significant depending on the size of the project. And the intent of those fees is to offset the cost long-term of providing the services to the town, not of putting in infrastructure, but going even further than that and paying fees for those. So
essentially, the days of involuntary annexation are pretty much gone. At this point, if you annex in, it is your idea. You, the developer.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, now we move on to the public comment period, and I have 15 of our fellow citizens signed up here to comment to the board. And as I had said earlier, this is not the legal legislative hearing. That will come next month and will be run by the Town Board of Commissioners. So really, this is just an opportunity for you to express whatever sentiments you may have toward this project. And I inferred earlier that they're all negative. So we will cap everyone's time at 3 minutes. Ms. Peterson is going to be managing the clock over there. And at 3 minutes, the gavel comes down and we go on to the next person so that everyone has the opportunity to make a representation. Director.
Yes, I was going to say, for people who have not participated in a comment period like this, you start with your first and last name and your physical street address or the place where you receive mail.
Okay, all clear? So I'm going to take the speakers in order of sign up as they signed up before the meeting tonight. And first on the list is Susie Russell.
I just signed up in case I'm.
All right, Susie will pass. We then move on to, I believe, I can't quite make out the handwriting. Is it Daryl or Daisy Griffin?
Daryl.
Daryl, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Darrell Griffin. I live at 399 Old Golston Road. I am right there at the intersection of Alston Chapel and Old Golston Road. And all these folks here can tell you the traffic that comes through every day. Next week, when school starts, I invite all of y'all to come and go on Old Golston Road, go to the other end, whichever end you want to go to, and see how long it takes you to get out. If you go bypass and you want to go into town, turn left and go by Horton School. It's bad. So a few questions I have, the TIA, it talks here about final roadway improvements, driveways, turning lanes, and that kind of stuff. Do y'all have that as something we can see? Because if you go in my yard, I'm not gonna have no yard no more.
It is submitted once we can make it.
Please do. Next, the Reed's Farm and this new development that y'all want. Will it have any connections to go out on 64?
Yes, well, the concept plan, there's a cross access shown to Reese Farm.
All right, explain how the results in development, served by public facilities, including police, fire, and emergency medical. I can't speak for police and I can't speak for EMS, but I can speak for fire. We have not had one request or any idea of the impact that it makes on the fire department. It is killing us, what we have right now. It is hard to keep up with what we have. Tax revenues, I understand, oh yeah, the town's gonna have all this money. We're trying to build another station right now, just the Chatham Parks, just the station itself is $10 million. The town don't have that. Who's gonna pay for it? All of us. So, I mean, everything they're proposing, you know, it's great for these people that's gonna come here, but for us that live on Alston Chapel, Old Golston Road and surrounding areas, it's terrible for us. It's the impact on us is bad. I hope that's consideration that, you know, since we are here, what we have to live with and what these people will come in here, they're getting the butter end of the deal. And there is no way that taxes are not going to go up with this. So I would hope y'all would try to understand, and y'all lived here a long time. Come see the traffic next week. Y'all come to my house. We'll walk up there. Please take that into consideration we have.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Next, name on the list is Gary, is it Simpson?
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Gary Simpson residing at 82 Cynthia Lane in Pittsburgh. And look, friends, after hearing that marvelous presentation from the professional Pulte team who does this all the time and is convincing us that this is the best thing since sliced bread and we'd be crazy not to jump on it. Here's the bottom line on the whole thing. The current land use plan wisely designates a portion of land that Pulte wants rezoned as a natural resource conservation target area. So what we're really doing here tonight is finding out whether town government really gives a whit about their land use plan that has been worked over and over for a long time, or whether they're willing to bulldoze and bury it in what used to be a forest.
Yes.
Okay, right along with the border of Alston Chapel and the Robeson Creek. The classification natural resource conservation target area protects the wildlife, the waterways, the woods, and all the other natural plants that are along there. But if you go ahead and rezone this, all that's gone. It's off the books, never to be seen again. Obviously, the request for rezoning is not consistent with the land use plan, as the planning department analysis indicates, stating that it will be difficult to develop this parcel in compliance with the land use plan. Now, I don't have much time, so let me just cut to this. Not only would rezoning be an ecological blunder for this piece of land and increase the tax burden of all the people who chose to live in this RA area, don't want to move, don't want to sell, want to stay there forever, but it would also be a great cultural loss. One of the purposes listed in the UDO is, and I quote, to encourage accommodation and enhancement of Pittsburgh's cultural resources. In addition to being a precious natural resource, this parcel is also a very important cultural resource. A story of Pittsburgh's past is enshrined in a small cemetery, the William Alston Cemetery that's within these woods. And as I think of the historical value of that cemetery and all the land around it, that was once Hale-Brown Plantation, an integral part of our history. I can't help but think of our beloved historian, Gene Brooks, who was just passed on recently from us. And not only was Gene an astute history teacher, but he was a devout and devoted public servant, serving for over 2 decades.
as a commissioner for the town of Pittsboro. And knowing that Gene was a man who loved Pittsboro and who loved its history and also loved maintaining the lands around it, I suggest that if he were tonight, his spirit would be saying this to you, some words of wisdom. He'd look at you straight in the eye and say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson. Our next citizen to speak is Cindy Schmidt.
Thank you very much. My name is Cindy Schmidt and I live at 128 Serenity Lane, Pittsboro. And I'd like to piggyback on something that Gary has said and something Daryl has said. They're taking some of their information from the applicant supplement Alston Chapel Road rezoning. And one of the things that Pulte Homes has said at the end of their presentation was, this is in the public interest, meaning it's in the public interest to change the zoning. You guys here, these individuals over here, and we all agreed when the original plan came out that that was the best plan. And now we're saying, oh, we were wrong. It's not the best plan because these gentlemen think it's not the best plan. So we're going to throw our future land use map away. We're going to throw the Pittsboro land use plan update away. And we're going to do what these guys want. When we're the public and these gentlemen say it's in our best interest to rezone. It's not. We're here to tell you, all of us, that it's not in our best interest, and we are the public. They don't get to talk for us. You guys do. And we're talking to you and saying, represent us and decline this. If you go through the application supplement, what they neglect to say in all of these points is that what they want to do here is served by things that are already done. Chatham Park is already done and serves the things that they say this subdivision will serve. The farm right north of it is already zoned. It's already there. And it serves these purposes. This development does not serve the purpose. Thank you very much.
Next on the list, Matthew Carpenter. Matthew Carpenter. Okay, that's you're signed up. I thought maybe we had two Matthew Carpenters. All right, thank you, Counselor. We now move to Connie McAdams. Connie?
Connie McAdams, 597 Alston Chapel Road. In the first factor to consider, Pulte accurately quotes the land use plan description of key natural resources and preservation of important features such as riparian areas, stands of mature forests, wetlands, floodplains, and adjacent forested areas. The whole parcel is a mature forest adjacent to wetlands, floodplains, and riparian areas along Robinson Creek. To comply with the natural resource conservation target area, the entire 63 plus acres should be preserved and protected as a standing forest. As mentioned in the land use plan, there is also biodiversity and the potential of rare species to be considered. Some of those noted in the land use plan include box turtles, red-headed woodpeckers, bald eagles, and Acadian flycatchers, all of which I have personally seen on or around this forest. In points 2 and 3, Pulte expresses their opinion that this rezoning is required. There is no such requirement. The property is currently, as Cindy said, correctly zoned for residential, and about 45 homes could already be built there without rezoning. Pulte lists VinFast as one of their justifications for this proposal. We all know that VinFast has been delayed and scaled back several times already. It will not open in 2025, and the claim that they will employ and need housing for 7,500 people anytime soon is not accurate. In response to the question about compatibility, Pulte mostly addresses Reeves Farm, which is located across the creek to the north and is accessed by Highway 64. They don't mention that their plan is totally incompatible with the small farms and modest homes where families have lived for decades along Alston Chapel Road. For those of us who plan to stay in our homes for the rest of our lives, the idea of increased property values is not an advantage. We just want to live peacefully in our homes and to be able to afford our property taxes. Pulte says the proposed rezoning will not result in significant adverse impacts on the natural environment. They intend to clear cut most of 63 acres of forest and cover it with pavement and 192 rooftops. As we all saw when Debbie came through, flooding is already a major concern along Robinson Creek. I'm sure you all know that destroying a forest and all the related wildlife habitat is indeed a huge, significant adverse impact on the natural environment. Pulte's application only lists 3 adjacent properties.
Thank you, Ms. McAdams. Thank you. We'll move on now to Liz Pullington. Do you want to speak? Do you want to speak? Okay, please. I'm sorry. Welcome.
Liz Collington, 390 Rocky Hills Road. I live a little bit south of where this is proposed. This proposal is inconsistent with the land use plan and with the goals of the UDO. The natural resources overlay should require more from the developer than simply not building where they aren't allowed to build anyway, the floodplain and the buffer area. This is not a conservation subdivision as defined in the UDO, nor are they proposing low impact development techniques such as stormwater diversion other than curb and gutter. The additional environmental conditions are nice and what all developers should be doing, but they don't affect the development footprint, the polluting effect of new streets and driveways, and the hydrological effect of replacing absorptive forests with hard surface in an area that already flows downstream. The developers do not address this, and in the conditions, they're not even committing to stormwater ponds, etc., out of the floodplain, nor to retain forest and open space. Meanwhile, much of the rationale that they provide is totally bogus. I really feel like I need to address that. It's currently not a location where water and sewer lines are quote, expected to expand in the next several years. There's no proposed dense development beyond this property. It's a very isolated location for dense but mostly higher priced housing, and it would not be totally walkable to downtown or to distant grocery stores. It is not, in fact, a natural extension of Reeves Farm for 4 reasons. It has different main road access, interconnectivity. True interconnectivity would require more than a single bridge through crossing. The developer is not committing to build or even pay for that single bridge. And these new homes would be too far from whatever mixed use Reeves Farm might be able to attract adjacent to Business 64. Currently, those are not there, and may not be. It's ridiculous to claim that development would be consistent with a neighborhood that isn't even built yet, while ignoring that it's inconsistent with the existing neighborhoods, as mentioned, to the west, but also to the east, the north, and the south. Every single rezone proposed presented to the town to date has cited Wolfspeed and VinFast as the rationale for various kinds of new housing. And if that new housing were suitable, then those needs have been more than met or will be when the Sanford Force Main is completed. In addition, this project doesn't include apartments, which those 2 projects would be more likely to require. This area currently has a tight housing market because of the lack of sewer capacity, but the bulk unmet need is primarily for less expensive housing. Once.
Thank you, Ms. Ellington. We're
Are we
out
done?
of time.
Wow, okay.
Thank you.
No, I don't consider this to be in the public interest.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patrick Teisman. Patrick Teisman. Not present. We'll move on then to Jackie McClelland, and I see Bill McClelland is also signed up. Is one going to speak for both, or are both going to speak to different points?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you.
He said, I see that Bill is also signed up. Is he going to speak, or are you speaking for both?
No, he's going to speak and I'm.
All right, good. All right, thank you. Proceed.
I start now?
Yes.
All right, I'm Jackie McClellan. I live at 3261 Alston Chapel Road. Listening tonight, it seems to me that there's still too much unknown from the developer for us, this project to move forward. Thank you so much.
Wanted to hear you.
I know. Okay. So the pro to me seems that they would increase the tax base for the town, but they can't tell you what that would be. I know it sounds great, but is it worth it? What are the associated costs to Pittsburgh, to the community, to the wildlife, to the environment? I know it's going to lead to more congestion. We're all concerned about that, especially living on those roads that are connected to this area. But how congested will it become? The company is not telling us how many bedrooms will be put in each unit. There could be 10 bedrooms in some units. So it's not clear how many people each unit will hold, or how many cars will be associated with those families. They say the builder will decide at a later date. Well, that basically keeps us in the dark. We don't know. We have no idea how many people will be in that property. If there are 2 people per unit, 192 units, it'd be 384 people, and they both would have cars. It'd be 384 more cars on our roads. 4 people, maybe 2 parents and 2 children, it'd be 768 people. And some of those kids might be old enough to drive their own cars and have them. So there might be 768 more cars coming down those 2 little drives onto Alston Chapel. They told us that there was a study that said there would not be a problem with congestion. But how can anyone determine the impact on the roadway and the traffic congestion when we don't know the number of people or the number of cars that they will have? Okay, so I had a 5-minute talk ready, but now I have to get it to 3, I think. I'm hurrying. People moving in here will no doubt come from some of the surrounding towns like Cary and Raleigh and Apex and Chapel Hill, looking for less congestion and a more peaceful life. However, they will still work in those cities and do their shopping there after work. You know, Target, Costco, Kohl's, you name it. And before returning to Pittsburgh, they won't be shopping here and supporting local businesses as much as the developer wants you to believe. Finally, well, no, let me go to finally. Well, yeah, finally. Finally, there's no good reason to rezone that 63 acres. It's already been told. It was a good plan. It's still a good plan. The 63 acres or 64 acres or whatever fits in that plan. That's my.
Did you want to follow and just to continue the theme, or do you want to wait to speak later? Well, please step forward. Bill McClelland.
I don't let her talk to me for me too much. She does sometimes, but anyway, you know, we moved here, Bill, a year.
For the recording, please state your name and your address for the recording.
Oh, okay.
You state.
Bill McClellan, 3261 Alston Chapel Road. We moved out here about a year ago from Cary, and thinking that it was a nice little rural town surrounded by farmland and timber. And it looks to me like the almighty dollar is trying to make Pittsburgh another Cary. We've got Chatham Park, and then we've got Reese Farm, and now people want to put 200 houses in this situation. You know, I'm really against any houses going into this property. It is a small tributary of the Neuse River. And as some of you may know, most of our major river systems now are under a lot of threat from sediment, from chemicals, from other problems. And it's very important that we protect these little streams and other water bodies that feed the main river systems in this state. And when you have a creek that surrounds almost three sides of this situation, of this subdivision, you're going to have runoff from the streets, you're going to have runoff from the yards, you're going to have pesticides used by the people that live there to control weeds in their yard, to spray for their shrubs and flowers and their gardens. And fire ants, when you open up the timber, you're going to have fire ants, and people don't want those in their yard. So there's no doubt in my mind that pesticides are going to wind up in the stream along with yard waste. And this idea that they're going to plant warm season grasses and that's going to cure all the troubles is biological nonsense. People are going to spray and use chemicals. And it's just, there's just absolutely no reason to change the existing zoning in this project for this almighty dollar that the increased tax basis to the city is not going to compensate for the traffic, more pollution and trash on the streets and more crime. It's just not worth it. So I'm begging you to not approve this project.
Thank you, Mr. Mozell. Our speaker is Marilyn Beal. Ms. Beal,
That's me.
welcome.
300 Woodbury Forest and 500 Old Alston Road, where our horses reside. Our pasture is directly across. I figured out a solution to all this. The builder and the owner, Mr. Hamad, supply all of us with helicopters and helicopter training. Because as Mr. Griffin said, it is virtually impossible to get into town when parents are picking up their children. I drive into town passing our pasture at the corner of 902 and Old Alston Road, so I have a good visibility of traffic. And I have often seen the traffic for the primary school backed up to the town park. I had to avoid going down the road, then went to 15501 to go out and had to sit through 2 traffic lights. So you're gonna add on, what, 300, 400 more vehicles? The only way to get into town will be helicopter. It's terrible. And while we're on the subject of the primary school, will our primary school be able to absorb all these people? Hence, having to build another school. Tell me that that won't increase our taxes. My business is taxes. So I see the increase in taxes, in property taxes. I avoided an increase in my property taxes because we have a graveyard on the pasture. And the county was very nice to give me consideration for that. But this is a terrible, terrible idea. It's terrible. Plus, we're going to have a lot of traffic on Woodbury Forest, people cutting through. We have horses. Our neighbor across the street has goats. There are horse farms up and down Alston Chapel. The complexion of our neighborhood is exactly this. And I think the most ideal use of that property would be 10-acre parcels to keep with the complexion of our neighborhood. That's all I've got to say. Please don't laugh at me.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Patricia Robbins. Patricia Robbins.
Already been expressed by others.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Next, Connor Jarvis. Connor Jarvis? Connor, would you like to speak? Please.
Okay.
Well done. Your name and your address.
Connor Jarvis, 696 Pine Parkway. Planning board members, I stand here to my true efforts to not offer my personal opinion, but my professional one. I hold degrees in environmental science and biology and a master's in science and sustainable management. I'm a former board member of the Regional Land Trust, Triangle Land Conservancy. I'm professionally certified as a hazardous material manager, and I'm employed by Pfizer as an environmental manager. As an environmental review and advisory board committee appointee, a public servant as yourself, we are called to make recommendations to our elected officials that best serve the long-term advancement of our community. I want to make it clear, I don't oppose economic betterment of Chatham County, and I do respect the right of this landowner to pursue this rezoning request. However, the growth and opportunity should not be considered in a silo, but in accordance with the social and environmental implications of each decision. The current municipal land use plan on page 29, as it's quoted many times tonight, the new developments should apply conservation design techniques that cluster developments away from the key natural resources, preserve important features such as riparian areas, stands on mature forest, wetlands, floodplains, and adjacent forested areas. Furthermore, the rezoning proposal discussed today in question 7 the presenting party was asked if any significant environmental impact would be anticipated. They answered no. Clearing a land equivalent to 60 times this building's acres that we have this meeting in tonight would have a significant environmental impact, including state required storm permits for construction. While the construction plan presented by the contractor are compliant with the minimum riparian setback requirements, one will be very hard pressed to attest that the ecological losses, watershed continuity, added storm surge, and flood risk would not be realized with this land use change. As mentioned, the rezoning request should be considered on a case-by-case basis, giving factors that play the proposal and efforts to hold true with the vision articulated in the currently ratified land use plan. I respectfully recommend that the planning board rejects this request. Thank you.
Is Amy Bubel? Amy? I'm sorry, I couldn't read your handwriting. Please give me your name and address.
Amy Boo,
Yep, there you go. Check.
Amy Bubeck, 530 Alston Chapel Road. I ditto what a lot of people have said up here, so I've kind of scratched out things that have already been mentioned. But I wanted to say a few things. First, I want to say how sad it is that we keep having to go to these meetings, these developer meetings all over Chatham County. And the residents mostly are against all these developments, yet they still keep going through, which is a sad statement of what the residents' vote counts for, because they seem to be doing nothing. They go to these meetings, they object some more, they send emails, they make calls, whatever, and that they still go through, and it's just sad. I think that the people that live here are being sold out by the people that might be coming here. And I think that's also very sad. I think that it was mentioned that a lot of people are coming here from other counties and whatnot. They have Chatham Park. They have what's going to be Reeves Farm. This development does not belong on this piece of land. This piece of land is gorgeous. It doesn't accommodate this much development right there. I also wanted to say that the future land use plan and the zoning, I'm not sure I see the point of having these things if someone can swoop in and just change them and make changes and suddenly, oh poof, we can put 7,000 houses on this piece of land that used to not be able to have that. We move here for the space, the quiet, the country, and it keeps encroaching on the people that already live here. And we're being sacrificed for people that may be potentially moving in. There's a place for development, and I just don't think that this is the place for that. And just, I agree with everything everyone else has said. And I want to make one more point. in 5 years, in 10 years, whatever, you all will be gone. You're not gonna be on this board. The commissioners won't be on this board, but we will be living with your decisions. So I'd appreciate that you take that into account because we're gonna still be here. You guys won't be necessarily on these boards anymore and we're gonna suffer for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Grabiel. John Grabiel? Am I saying that correctly? Your name and address for the record, sir.
I'm Graybeal, 3396 Alston Chapel Road. My main concern, and I think maybe the main concern that all of us should have with this development is that with a single stroke, it would cause the loss of 64 acres of a mature and long-standing forest. Trees are a vital resource in Chatham County since they constitute the primary means we have in the county for sequestration of greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, that are causing climate change. I'm a member of the County Climate Change Advisory Committee, and although I don't represent the committee here and do not speak for it, I know from my experience on the committee how fundamentally trees are valued by it. The committee has sponsored 2 greenhouse emission studies. First one in 2015 found that we had about 1.6 million metric tons of carbon emitted in the county in 1 year, and that our trees soaked up or sequestered only about 75% of that. A second study found emissions of slightly less than 1 million, and the trees sequestered slightly more than that. The committee also played an active role in advocating for the new county UDO, an effective tree protection component. The point here is that the crucial role that our trees play in reducing carbon in the atmosphere and thereby ameliorating the effects of climate change. All of us are experiencing the onward march of climate change. I believe it's been found that July was the hottest July on record. And international authorities found that one day in this past July was the hottest day in the history of recorded data. While our primary goal needs to be reduction of carbon emissions by reducing the use of fossil fuel and increasing the use of renewables, we should also not let any opportunity go by to protect trees, the primary machine we have to reduce carbon in the atmosphere. I think, given the time constraint, everything else can be omitted, but I will give it to the gentleman over here, so you'll have it for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graybill. And a big thank you to everyone who participated. We've had a lot of wise and informed and sensitive comments. And thank you everyone for your courtesy and attention to the comments. We come now to the point where I can entertain a motion from the board to either approve the land use consistency statement or to disapprove. And if I may have
We allowed to make comments, sir?
yeah, we can make comments after we take a motion.
All right.
Do we have a motion to approve or disapprove?
Well, I move that this is inconsistent with the land use plan.
So we would have a motion to disapprove. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Ms. Mize.
Discussion.
Discussion amongst the board members. Here's your
I have
chance, right?
Back in 2014, I believe it was 14, somewhere in that time span, Chatham Park paid for an analysis on the cause and effects of Chatham Park on Pittsburgh. And warned us to get our UDO in order and get our land use plan in order. Please correct me if I'm wrong. They knew it was coming, and I feel this is what was coming. And I read that land use plan twice today. I went over different components within that land use plan. And under no good conscience could I vote for this one. So I vote denial.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion among the board members before we take a vote?
I've got a handful, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
As has been said repeatedly, it's not consistent with the land use plan. We are we are quickly giving up our natural resource conservation overlay areas. But a couple other comments that I had coming in here. This is not truly spot zoning, but it really effectively acts as spot zoning. And what I mean by that is it is now contiguous with Reeves Farm, which was approved a year or two ago. And it does touch. But there's no legal way for them to cross the creek to get between this property and Reeves Farm. I've done wetlands permitting for years, and the Corps will not approve that in this case, unless they've changed their laws. So the only access for this property is to come south onto Alston Chapel. And that's why it looks to me as a spot zoning, even though technically it does touch north with Reeves, the Reeves Chapel parcel. The impervious area, as stated by the applicant, will be estimated at 40 to 50%. And if it is left go right now, even as they say, there could be 64 homes with septic and well on there. There could not be 64 homes. At best, there could be probably 40 to 45 with well and septic, because the county does have a 65,000 square foot minimum, which makes it take us to 1.5 acres. And then with other issues, you might have 40 homes. So 40 homes on an acre and a half lot are going to give you about 10% impervious, where now we're looking at 40 to 50% impervious. So there will be significant impacts if we allow this to go through. And then the last thing is really more personal to me. A friend of mine that lives in that area told me when I came by a few weeks ago that she was going to move, that whether this got approved or not, she felt that so much growth was coming, and this one right at her back door, that she was going to leave the county and move away because of this kind of thing happening. And that really broke my heart. Now that's very circumstantial to this situation, but I think we have to, as has been said by several people, these are our constituents. We are, I think we have to always remember why we're here, for the people that live here. We'll have development, we'll have development, we have a lot of PDD, MUPD land that can accommodate this kind of density. But I think anyway, my opinion is this is the wrong place for this type of project.
Mr. Director, did you have something to say before we vote, or?
Yes, I was just waiting for
I was waiting for the vote. All right, we'll call a vote. We have a motion and a second. All who would disapprove of this project, please state in the affirmative.
Disapprove.
Aye. Anyone approving? Unanimously rejected. So we have this board has disapproved the land use plan consistency statement, and that will be communicated to the Town Board of Commissioners.
You're leaving this evening, if you would sign your copy and.
I shall. I will ride till the end of the month.
Pardon?
I shall.
It's perfect. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna get to my next part.
Yes, planning department update.
Department update. Wanted to point out to you all that the Asteria, the first phase of Asteria, which is the project in the North Village of Chatham Park that is being developed by Story Living by Disney, will be in front of you all next month as a subdivision. It's a 500 lot subdivision. So it's a little exciting. I have to say there's still a great deal of secrecy involved in the project. But
That was gonna be my question. Are we gonna get to see a whole set?
absolutely not. Shown us one world, what they show you.
Right.
But anyway, we've had they were originally slated for this evening.
No.
Okay, so they were slated for this evening, but the project was not ready. So we have that particular item coming to the planning board next time. And that is probably the largest item for,
You're running everybody out of the building here.
yes, that's talent.
Let's
Superpower.
question outside, please.
It's my superpower. I was gonna say, if someone could get the door, that would be great.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, but anyway, so let me just say, I appreciate you all's cooperation this evening. I believe that you're going to see moving forward. You're going to see moving forward that planning staff is only going to give a recommendation in one direction or the other when it is determined that particular action is feasible and reasonable. In this particular case, we were trying to, I felt that the best method for getting a very balanced appraisal of what was going on was to simply ask you all to study your heart and give your thoughts to what was in front of you and give an honest assessment. So anyway, let me just say that I appreciate your service this evening. I appreciate your service every meeting, but I appreciate your service this evening because this was a very well-attended meeting and we're not quite used to that. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Director. Board comments? Anything from my
Yourself, please.
Well, I'll start with myself. I, following last month's meeting, submitted to the mayor, to the director, to the town board of commissioners, my resignation from the board, personal reasons, personal considerations. After 7.5 years for me, it's been a wonderful journey through 4 mayors, 3 planning directors, including the wonderful Mr. Cahoon Tingle, and 2 interim acting planning directors. I've learned a tremendous amount. I've had wonderful colleagues here on this board, and I wish you all the very best going forward. I imagine next month's meeting, which will be, I assume, chaired by our vice chair.
Yes.
To nominate and elect a replacement for yours truly to the position of chair of the board. But thank you all for being so supportive to me and being so kind, and I've enjoyed it and enjoy your friendship.
I also wanted to point out that our alternate member here has been appointed as a permanent member of this board, starting with next month's meeting.
Excellent. A wonderful appointment. Congratulations. All right, well, we'll, if there are no further board comments, we'll invite. Oh, do you have one?
Thank you for your service.
Oh, well, thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's been very, very informative to me, and
Would like to add our department's thanks for your service today.
well, thanks, Randy. It's a wonderful department, and Eric and Jenna and everybody else have been so kind and helpful to me, and I'm most appreciative. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all in favor of adjournment? Aye. It's unanimous. We're adjourned.
Next time, we'll beat that down.
Yeah.